Hello and welcome to the recreation of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in Parkitect. In today's video I am going to work on the layout and the train station. So I started off with a scenario map, started up a new save, not a new save, a new scenario, and I did 75 by 75 size map, so it's actually pretty small. And I thought to do a more of like a display model of just Big Thunder Mountain and maybe like the local area. That would be like maybe Frontierland and a little bit of maybe Fantasyland. I got this idea from browsing the RCT Reddit and a little bit inspiration from Coaster Speed's videos of people were showcasing like just snippets of their roller coasters, like recreations or other things like that, like as a small like map or blueprint in the game, and I like the idea of that aesthetic, so I'm going to do this here instead of just making this a normal blueprint, because if I made this a normal blueprint the ride would actually have to be up off the ground because the first section of this ride goes under the ground level. So I kind of like the idea of using the land to my advantage because this ride is actually built with the land in mind and stuff like that. So I chose Big Thunder first because it is one of my favorites at Disneyland. I rode it many times as a kid and as an adult. It is just one of those really well-themed roller coasters. It is a mine train runaway coaster, there's a story to it, and I just like the aesthetic of it. I'm a big sucker for westerns, so might as well start it off. And I've reproduced this ride, or I've made recreations before on RCT2 and RCT3. I never got to finish either of those projects because I was so young and I don't know, you can say naive and not experienced enough as I am now with this type of game. So I decided to give it another try, but this time using Parkitect, and I want to see how far I can do it. And I was pleasantly surprised, and it brought so much joy just doing this project again, because I haven't had joy in doing some projects lately. I've been kind of like doing the grind of making stuff, and just doing this for the about 2 or 3 days I've been working on it. I'm not done yet, I'm almost there. I got some finishing details on the outer rim, but if you've seen this video you probably already saw it on the Reddit that I posted a picture of Big Thunder. But that's why I'm going to show you guys how I got to that point, because it is a monstrosity of a project. There was so much stuff to put in, rocks and trees and things, and the layout itself is very it's complicated. There's a lot of interesting units and elements of this layout. I know this layout by heart because I've been on this ride so many times, so trying to reproduce that in a grid formation is the most difficult thing I've ever done in a game like this. But yeah, so here as I ramble about this ride, I've already completed the first chain lift, then it goes into a left turn down into the right turn where the possum tree is, and then into another right turn right before the second chain lift. And the second chain lift has to be at a diagonal because that's where the chain lift is in real life. It's at a diagonal, kind of gives you like a overview of the entire ride after experiencing the first exciting drop. And then that chain lift goes into a loop around back toward the front of the ride into the only helix, and then that helix leads you into a drop and then into the third chain lift, which would be your mine shaft blowing up scene that they've done. So trying to just make the layout first because I don't want to do any rock work just yet because that would be overwhelming myself at this point. So we're just going to continue to working on this and just figuring out different things in here and there, figuring out the different like heights and things. And the thing about recreating Big Thunder, the advantage of using not like Coaster Anarchy, it could have used it or done a technique of making the chain lifts taller. So I chose not to make them as tall. I think all the chain lifts here are all the same height, even though probably in real life the real ride would probably have different heights of chain lifts. I think the second chain lift is just a little bit taller than the first one. But the scaling for Parkitect is a little different. It's more like a toy scale because all the guests are quite large headed and other things like that. So I'm playing with the different scaling for this game, and it's more of a like a, I don't know, this is an 85% recreation of Big Thunder Mountain, but a good enough representation that you know that it's Big Thunder Mountain when you just look glimpse of it. That's kind of the objective, or that's the back four mind in my head while I'm building something like this. It's like, I can't make it accurate. It's not Planet Coaster. So I'm gonna fudge some things, change some things to make it more accurate to what this world is, because this world is some other world. We don't know where this world is, but Parkitect is more of a Toylandish looking land or world, so that's what I'm gonna aim for. But I like that the mine train was introduced in this game. Oof, I don't know, but right before release, I think, or something like that, or a couple months before release, it was introduced because we didn't have it for the longest time. So I'm glad that this was put into the game, and it's a good addition. So on to fixing some of the turns in here like that, because I was exiting out of the helix here and I had no clearance, so changing that had to happen. Because I already know where to go. That's the thing, I already know where the next piece of track's going to go. Makes it easier for building, but also trying to make it accurate. So that's why I did a lot of deleting and replacing and changing of different angles. The benefit for doing this in Parkitect instead of RCT is that we have the ability to do more of advanced pieces than RCT. So in Parkitect we have those options of going into those pretty nice angles and or making the pieces bigger or smaller. In RCT I didn't have that option, so making the ride as smooth and or as accurate as possible is almost more difficult than it is right now. And so doing it in this game kind of gave it that extra, I don't know, bump up in reality and in like realistic stuff. It makes it really well done. I could have used Coaster Anarchy in this to help me out with some things like the drops and stuff like that, but I like to keep it as vanilla as possible to showcase how far I can stretch this game. It's kind of a challenge for me, so I might not do that in the future. I don't know. It's a mod. Mods are good. I like mods too, but I like certain mods. I only have one mod that I've had on anyway. That would be Construction Anarchy. And Construction Anarchy will have a lot to do with this recreation too, because there's a lot of things that I can do with Construction Anarchy, but not regular vanilla construction. So here I'm going to build the rest of the coaster. This will be the last stretch of the coaster, so this will be your drop from third chain lift into a roundabout over itself, and then into the splashdown where the skeleton, dino skeleton, or T-Rex skeleton would be. Yeah, that's basically it so far for the layout, because it then goes into the brick run. So I do some changings here, like move the helix back one block or one square because it was too far, so I can do the turn from the splashdown. Adjusting things like that. Nothing was actually finalized until I finally had the right run at least once, and I was happy with it. I do want to make a note for the curve before the second lift. The curve before the second lift had an issue that it was too big and too wide. So later on I changed it off screen and it becomes smaller. You might see that later on in another video. I'm just making a note now for myself so that I did change it. I did some things off screen and I didn't record everything. I recorded about, I don't know, 4 to 5 hours of me working on this project. 'Cause I worked like 4-hour increments on this project, so maybe this was like maybe a 20-hour build, so maybe almost one day. And then yeah, that's it. This is the latest project that I haven't really actually like stopped working on it in a long time. Like I spent like long hours playing Parkitect just to work on this ride and stuff like that. So it was an interesting thing. So the ride's done so far at this point. I'm going to figure out where the second train station is going to go, because this is a double load station, and in Parkitect we don't have that option yet, and I wish we did. But it'd probably be hard to code or something. Who knows? I don't know coding, but it could probably be really hard to add a switch station or something. But I'm going to add a fake one next door to kind of simulate that. Oh, it's a two-side station. And then I'll do some special props with that, how to make the tracks look like they're intersecting. You'll probably see that in another video. but we're just going to focus on just finishing up the track and getting myself where placements should be, because the hard part about starting on an empty map is there's no point of reference. So the point of reference is the coaster. I need to put the coaster down as best of my ability as possible and kind of guess where it's going to sit. I'm glad that I picked a 75 by 75 map, because if I picked a 50 by 50, I don't think I would fit Big Thunder on it at all. So it's a good thing that I went a little bit bigger than I thought, and it worked out because that means I can go do some details on the side, like there's a restaurant next to Big Thunder at Disneyland called Del Zocalo. I can build Del Zocalo now. I can build maybe the backstage area where the trains go sleep at night, so I can go pick that area, which is a cool idea. So I might do that a little later on in another video. So yeah, I like the outcome. Like I said before, I'm planning on doing other rides. I think I want to do Matterhorn from Disneyland, maybe a Ghost Rider from Knott's Berry Farm, maybe some other Splash Mountain, Disneyland again, some other rides. If you guys have ideas for rides, I can try to, I don't know, do a recreation, but not necessarily realistically like Coaster Bee does, because his coasters are pretty accurate. They're really cool looking. Like, his building skills are quite up there. I'm sometimes jealous of his building skills, but he's pretty good. So I want to maybe keep track of maybe doing a Disneyland line. Yeah, maybe like a Disneyland series. So next one will be Matterhorn. Then after that, maybe Splash Mountain, and then maybe if we had rapids, I could do Grizzly River Run at California Adventure, but don't have rapids yet. That will come soon. We'll see. We'll have rapids. I hope so, because I really miss having like a rapids ride. But regardless. Here I'm figuring out where the queue line's going to go for the little pit of where the queue kind of sits, or Rainbow Ridge is. Figuring out where all my exits and stuff like that, and for platforms for the station. And then figuring out the exit for it too, because that's what it needs to happen. I'm doing all this stuff to do reference points, because it gives me a better idea and grounding of where I need to put my props and or lines and stuff like that. So this helps a lot by doing this like pre-building or like pre-blueprinting. If you guys are like doing something like that for a project or like something like that, it's okay to do some pre-laying out where buildings are gonna go. Like I do that with sometimes the walls sets. Like I just place them down in squares or weird shapes and be like, okay, that's a bank or that's a grocery store, and then kind of like name it and then start working on it then, instead of just looking at an empty map. Again, looking at an empty map is the worst thing you can possibly do, because you just sit there like, I don't know what I want to do. So don't do an empty map, just start placing things down. So here's the first, like, I don't know, parts of the train station. So this is where I'm going to put down the roofs to figure out where they should go and how the angles are. I've looked at a lot of references online. I had Google Chrome open, so I had looked at Google Maps. I looked at some other pictures online of Big Thunder Mountain. I had a couple books at home that were based off roller coasters and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad specifically, so I looked at those, read up the things, I looked at some history on the ride, stuff like that, just kind of get myself back in the mood again, because I haven't been on Big Thunder Mountain in at least 5 years, something like that, so I kind of stopped going to Disneyland. But yeah, so I was just figuring out all those places where they should go, actually, at this point. So the station will start creating itself, or somewhat copying. In a recreation project that I found different from making something from scratch is that I have less of a stress thinking about what should look nice and what doesn't, versus actually just copying something from real life. And so copying something like making a recreation of Big Thunder, it felt like it was a better thing to do. Like, oh, okay, I just have to make sure that this building matches my building, or they have to kind of match together from real life to game, and it kind of felt like a, I don't know, a better just experience playing, just kind of like messing around, trying to get as close as accurate as possible, because I get stressed out or I get like overwhelmed when I'm building something from scratch. And so just doing it from here was kind of interesting, you know, like, oh, I feel great just kind of copying someone else's idea, because that's basically what I'm doing, copying. But I add some things here and there to get the goal that I want to simulate or get that accuracy of to represent this recreation. This recreation is also modeled after a model that is at the Disneyland Resort right now of Big Thunder Mountain, which is at their hotel, and that model sits in their like lobby, and that model is a representation of a model that they use for construction of this ride. And so it's kind of a, I don't know, a representation of Big Thunder, but it's not as accurate as it should be. But that's kind of the idea here too with this Parkitect build, is that I don't have to be as accurate. I don't need to be, but I'm gonna get close enough with it. And I think this is like a good way to kind of rule of thumb of like doing recreations. Get pretty close. You don't have to get like super like into it. Not like if you're doing like, I don't know, Planet Coaster. Planet Coaster recreations are incredible. They have come to the level of like they're almost real. But here in Parkitect, I have a lot of limitations, which makes that the challenge again, and I like that. And so I kind of like the idea of doing more of these recreations. So as the station kind of builds itself as I ramble about this, there are a couple like key history things that I learned from Big Thunder that I didn't know while researching this. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in California was made by Dynamic Structures, and I thought it was made by Vekoma, and I was totally surprised it wasn't. Vekoma made Florida, Tokyo's, and Paris's Big Thunder Mountains, but not Disneyland's, and I was surprised that it wasn't. So that's something I never knew. Also, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad here in Disneyland is modeled after Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. So it's interesting how the rock work there is modeled after that versus the other roller coasters of Big Thunder. They're modeled by a completely different, I think they're modeled by Monument Valley in Arizona. So that's a completely different set of rocks or texture, which I didn't know. So fun things that I learned from just like reading up on Big Thunder. The other thing would be that I think Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was the first coaster to utilize computer assistance. Like they had computer programs make the layout for them and stuff like that, or they drew it up on the computer, which is like cool because this ride was opened in 1979. So that's before computers were really like part of everything. So those are just little things I found out. I felt that were entertaining. So this is where it's starting to wrap up in the station. It looks like a train station, and it looks like the Big Thunder train station. So I'm liking how it's turning out. And yeah, just doing the little details. Borders again. Borders again are like the best thing to use. Just borders, borders, borders. So in the next couple videos, because I hopefully want to make this short, is going to be some rock work, some working of I think the second chain lift, and then maybe the town and stuff like that. So this will be like hopefully a 3-part series. I don't want to make this as long because I still have other videos to finish like Hyperion City and other things like that. So I'll see you guys in the next video.